Claressa Shields just declared war on YouTube, and Papoose'S receipts just detonated her whole story. So here's where the story lands today, and y'all already know the move. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and stay glued because this one is heavier than it looks. Claressa Shields just stepped on the gas again, and this time she is not whispering into a Snapchat camera or hiding behind a live. She is openly threatening to drag YouTube creators into a courtroom, openly accusing entire channels of being paid to lie about her, and openly insisting, and I want y'all to hold this word tightly, insisting that she and Papoose did not become entangled until 2024. That is the new official story. That is the line she is now ready to defend under oath, allegedly. The problem is the receipts. The problem is the timeline. The problem is the divorce decree that does not exist. And the bigger problem is that the man she is defending has already opened his own mouth in places that contradict her brand new version of events. So before we keep going down this road, let me make one thing crystal clear. Everything covered here is alleged. Every opinion is mine and mine alone. And this entire conversation is for commentary and entertainment under the Copyright Act of 1976. Now let's get into it, because Claressa Shields has walked herself into a corner, and she does not yet realize the corner is on fire. The latest receipt comes from a comment Claressa Shields apparently dropped into the wild, and shout out to the content creator who flagged it first, because it is a goldmine. In that comment, Claressa Shields says, and I'm paraphrasing the spirit, that she does not pay attention to the negativity, that she ignores what she calls fake boxing YouTube channels, that they are jealous of her success, that they cannot find anything bad to say about her boxing career, so they have weaponized her relationship instead, that the man she is with was already separated before they even met, that he was allegedly sleeping on Remy Ma's couch, that the two of them, meaning Remy Ma and Papoose, were never getting back together, that she was never a mistress and never a side chick, that Remy Ma already had her own situation before any of this happened, and that Claressa Shields is now quietly working off camera to get YouTube content removed, to get channels stripped, and to drag several of these creators into a courtroom. That is the statement. That is the new line in the sand. And it sounds tough on paper. It really does. But let's actually weigh it as a whole, because the second you start putting this story on a scale, the scale tips so hard it flips. Question number 1, and this is the question that nobody around her seems willing to answer for her. Where is the divorce decree? Where is the document? Where is the legally executed, signed, sealed, filed with the court paperwork that proves the man she is publicly attached to is actually, legally, a single human being? Because we are now multiple years deep into the saga and that document has not surfaced. Not once. Not in a leak, not in a Vlad TV interview, not in a courtroom record, not in a single screenshot from a single legal filing. Divorces do not take this long. Divorces, especially when both parties claim they do not want anything from each other, can be wrapped in months. The only things either party would realistically need to settle would be a basic custody schedule for their child. That is it. That is the entire administrative lift. And yet years have passed, and the paperwork never seems to materialize. So tell me, what exactly is Claressa Shields defending? A separation that was announced verbally but never recorded officially? A breakup that lives only on Instagram captions? Because that is not a marriage that ended. That is a marriage that is, by every legal measurement that matters, still active. Question number 2, and this one is for Remy Ma, if any of the whispers about her are accurate. Word on the street, and again this is alleged, is that Remy Ma may hold property in North Carolina. And here is where this becomes a problem for the new lovebirds. North Carolina is one of a small handful of states in this country that still recognizes a civil cause of action called alienation of affection. It is a legal doctrine that allows a spouse, a still legally married spouse, to sue a third party who interfered in the marriage. It is real. It has teeth. And juries have awarded enormous verdicts in that state for exactly this kind of fact pattern. So if Remy Ma ever decided to be petty, if Remy Ma ever decided to send a message, Remy Ma could in theory put a serious dent in the $8 million bag that she keeps reminding everyone she has earned. Now, will Remy Ma do that? Probably not. Remy Ma seems more interested in moving on and dropping music and letting karma cook. But the fact that the door even exists, the fact that the legal lane is even theoretically open, should be enough to make Claressa Shields recalibrate the tone of her comment section warfare. Let's stack it all together for a moment. Claressa Shields says she is not a mistress. She says she is not a side chick. She says she is not in an entanglement. And she says she and Papoose only met in 2024. Cool. Now bring in the contradicting evidence, because off-camera the picture looks nothing like that. Papoose himself, in a Vlad TV sit-down, admitted there was correspondence between him and her prior to the timeline she is now publicly defending. Papoose himself acknowledged on that platform that there was no ring, that the two of them do not even live together, and that several other narrative pieces the public was being fed do not match reality. So the man at the center of all of this has already, with his own mouth, in his own interview, undercut significant portions of the story his girlfriend is now ready to sue people over. And that is not a YouTube creator's invention. That is the man's own words. So before Claressa Shields drags content creators into court, somebody might want to remind her that the discovery process is a two-way mirror. Subpoenas pull text messages. Subpoenas pull screenshots. Subpoenas pull every direct message, every email, every voice memo, every flight booking, every Uber receipt, every studio sign-in sheet. If Claressa Shields takes a witness stand and testifies under oath that she and Papoose did not begin communicating until 2024, she had better hope that no document, anywhere in any cloud, on any device, in any third party's archive, contradicts that timeline. Because perjury is real, and Allah, as the saying goes, does not care who tells it. Now, right before we keep going down this road, I want to slow this all the way down and address something that the most loyal Claressa Shields defenders keep skipping over. There is a very specific moment in this entire saga that nobody from her side wants to revisit, and it comes from Fat Joe. According to widely circulated reports, the day before Remy Ma blew the entire situation up at the end of 2024, Remy Ma and Papoose were reportedly out to dinner with Fat Joe and the rest of their circle. They were dining together. They were laughing together. They were, by every visible indicator, behaving like a couple still actively trying to repair a marriage. And then the very next day, Remy Ma went public with everything. So pause, what kind of woman has dinner with her husband one night and detonates his entire public image the next morning? The answer is simple. A woman who found something out during or right after that dinner that she could not, under any circumstances, continue to tolerate. And here is where the brand new Claressa Shields timeline collapses. If Papoose was sitting at dinner with Remy Ma in late 2024, and if Remy Ma blew the lid off everything the very next day, the math suggests Papoose was not separated and sleeping on a couch. The math suggests Papoose was still very much inside that marriage, still attempting to play both sides, and still trying to manage two completely different lives. Because if the earlier exposure, the so-called Easy the Block captain situation, had truly ended the marriage, Papoose would have filed for divorce back then. He didn't. He continued to occupy that household, he continued to be present in that home, and according to multiple alleged accounts, he continued to entertain other women on the side, plural, not singular. So the question for Claressa Shields is not why YouTube channels keep telling this story. The question for her is why she is not the one filing the lawsuit. Why isn't she the one subpoenaing Papoose's phone records to find out exactly who else was in his rotation while she thought she had landed the prize? Why isn't she the one demanding answers about why a man who claims to be hers spends so much time staring into his phone whenever she's in the room? Because that is the man who should be terrified of discovery, not a creator on YouTube with a microphone and a ring light. When you weigh it as a whole, the contradictions only multiply. Claressa Shields wants the world to believe she met Papoose at the Shakur Stevenson fight in 2024. Fine. Let's pretend that's the timeline for a second. Even if you grant her that, she would have to walk into a courtroom and swear, under oath, that no message, no email, no DM, no studio session, no industry event, no mutual friends group chat connected her to Papoose before that night. And not just her, every person in her orbit would also be subject to the same discovery. Producers, trainers, promoters, stylists, assistants, every device, every cloud, every backup. Because that is how civil litigation actually works. The plaintiff opens her own life as wide as the defendant's life. And the moment Remy Ma's team, if she ever chose to be involved, produced a single screenshot, a single date-stamped exchange, a single text from before 2024, the perjury exposure would be catastrophic. The civil case Claressa Shields is threatening could be the very weapon that ends her boxing career, because boxing licenses can be revoked for moral turpitude. A perjury finding qualifies. And speaking of receipts, let's revisit one of the earlier, more theatrical threats from Claressa Shields. Earlier this year, before her February fight against Franghon Cruz-Dezern, Claressa Shields claimed that she had personally identified the YouTubers who had been criticizing her, that she had pulled up their addresses, and that she had made sure they would not even be allowed inside Little Caesars arena. She said the doors would be locked to them. She said security would have their faces. She said they would not get past the front. And here is the issue with that boast. If you have ever stepped into a major arena for an NBA game, for a concert, for a comedy special, for a championship boxing event, you already know the punchline. Arenas like Little Caesars have multiple entrances. They have rotating ticket scanning staff. They have metal detectors operated by independent contractors. They have bag checks performed by venue security who do not have access to a personal blacklist of YouTube usernames. The idea that one fighter could distribute a custom no-fly list to every checkpoint in a multi-floor arena is, on its face, fantasy. So when she said that and people listened, most folks paying attention already understood what was being sold. It was theater. It was a threat dressed up in performance armor. And it set the tone for everything Claressa Shields has tried since. Nobody is jealous of Claressa Shields, and I want to address this directly because she keeps repeating it. The critique against her is not a smear campaign. It is a series of legitimate, documentable observations. Critics have pointed out that her knockout percentage is unusually low for a fighter at her advertised level. Critics have raised questions about the quality of some of the opposition she has faced. Critics have noted that several of her marquee moments, including her crossover MMA appearance, did not produce the dominance her marketing claimed she would bring. None of that is jealousy. That is sports analysis. That is what every athlete in every sport endures the moment they step into the public arena. The difference is that most elite athletes either ignore the noise or answer it inside the ring. Claressa Shields, on the other hand, has chosen to escalate it into a personal life melodrama that has now overshadowed her own resume. And that is the real tragedy in all of this. Claressa Shields, a fighter who had a legitimate shot at being remembered as one of the most decorated American boxers of her generation, has instead spent the past chapter of her career building a public identity around a married man who refuses to legally untangle himself from his wife. Let's talk about that married man for a second, because the most generous reading of this entire situation still requires us to confront a fact that Claressa Shields seems determined to ignore. Married men, especially married men who are unwilling to file paperwork, are the most single-sounding humans on earth. They will tell you they are separated. They will tell you they sleep on the couch. They will tell you they live in different rooms. They will tell you they only stay for the kids. Some of them will even rent a small apartment to perform the optics of separation while still spending most nights at the family home. They will burn money on the staging because the staging keeps the new woman quiet. The phrase, "I'm separated," is the most weaponized two-word lie in the modern dating economy. And Claressa Shields, for all her bravado, fell for the oldest version of that script. She did not just believe it. She built a public brand around defending it. And she is now threatening litigation against the people who keep gently pointing out that her relationship is built on a foundation Papoose himself has not actually finalized. Here is the part of the story where Papoose's own contradictions take center stage. Because the public storyline Claressa Shields is selling, that she and Papoose only began after 2024, that Remy Ma was already done with the marriage, that there was no overlap, runs straight into the wall of Papoose's own behavior. Why has Papoose not filed for divorce? Why has Papoose not, at minimum, set the legal process in motion? Why has the tattoo of Remy Ma's name not been touched? Why are the public posts and tributes to his wife still live across his digital footprint? Why does Papoose, a man who is publicly attached to Claressa Shields, still operate online in a way that keeps Remy Ma adjacent to his identity? These are not YouTube questions. These are basic questions a partner asks before going public with a new relationship. And the fact that Claressa Shields has either never asked them or has accepted unconvincing answers tells you everything you need to know about the power dynamic here. Remy Ma carries an industry footprint that Papoose has never been able to replicate on his own. Remy Ma has the connections. Remy Ma has the placements. Remy Ma has the algorithm. Papoose, for all his catalog, has never landed at the cultural altitude his wife reached without him. And maybe, just maybe, that is the real reason the divorce paperwork keeps not getting filed. Now stack it all together, because the picture that emerges is not flattering for Claressa Shields. She is not the victim of a coordinated YouTube smear campaign. She is the architect of her own public reputation crisis. She chose to platform the relationship. She chose to do the magazine moments. She chose to do the breakfast show interviews. She chose to take the lifestyle photo shoots. She chose to weaponize her boxing platform to broadcast a romance that is, on paper, still legally entangled with another woman. And now that the public is responding the way the public always responds to a story like this, she wants to flip the table and reframe herself as the persecuted one. That is not how cause and effect works. That is not how public storytelling works. You do not get to set the stage, sell tickets, perform the show, and then sue the audience for clapping at the wrong moments. And here is the most important distinction that needs to be drawn, because Claressa Shields keeps comparing herself, implicitly, to situations she has nothing in common with. This is not a Tasha K situation. Nobody is fabricating medical conditions. Nobody is alleging hidden illnesses. Nobody is inventing personal traumas. Nobody is spreading the kind of unfounded, deeply personal claims that triggered the multi-million-dollar verdict in the Cardi B case. The content creators discussing Claressa Shields are reacting almost entirely to receipts that Remy Ma herself released. Remy Ma went on a live broadcast wearing that plaid flannel and aired out screenshot after screenshot. Remy Ma laughed her way through messages allegedly sent by Papoose during the Africa trip, messages in which Papoose, while supposedly committed to Claressa Shields, was telling his still legally wife how much he missed the way things used to be between them. Those receipts came from the wife, not from a YouTube channel. So if she wants to sue someone for the existence of those messages, the only viable defendant is Remy Ma. And we all know that lawsuit is never getting filed because Claressa Shields knows what discovery looks like. The frustration Claressa Shields is broadcasting is not really about defamation. It is about narrative control. Claressa Shields wants the conversation to stop. She wants the petitions to die down. She wants the alleged investigations to fade. She wants the timeline questions to disappear. She wants the cultural verdict to be reset. But the cultural verdict has already been rendered, and it is not flattering. The community is not going to platform a mistress over a wife. The community is not going to celebrate an entanglement as if it were a love story. The community is not going to ignore the fact that the man at the center of this has refused, year after year, to finalize the most basic legal step required to make this relationship clean. And no comment section threat, no cease and desist, no live rant is going to override that collective judgment. So here is the closing reality. Claressa Shields can keep recording the threats. She can keep drafting the comments. She can keep saying she is going to take down every channel that disagrees with her. But she cannot litigate her way out of a relationship she chose to make public. She cannot subpoena her way past a timeline her own boyfriend has already complicated on camera. And she cannot court her way around a divorce decree that does not yet exist. The audacity required to demand public sympathy for a man who refuses to legally separate from his wife is a posture that requires more support than the receipts will allow. And the longer Claressa Shields keeps amplifying this saga, the deeper the hole becomes. Because every live, every comment, every interview, every threat creates more documentation, and documentation is the very thing that undoes a perjury defense before the trial even begins. Now let me ask y'all the real questions, because this is where the comments get spicy. First, do you believe Claressa Shields actually meets the burden of proof to file any of these lawsuits she keeps teasing? Second, if Remy Ma genuinely owns property in North Carolina, do you think she should explore that alienation of affection lane or let karma cook on its own time? And third, what would actually change your mind about Claressa Shields right now? A divorce decree? An apology? A pivot back to her actual boxing career? Drop your honest answer in the comments, because I read every single one and the back and forth is half the reason this community is what it is. Hit that like if you made it this far. Smash that subscribe button because the next chapter of this story is already loading, and tap the bell so you never miss the moment a new receipt drops. There is a follow-up breakdown queued up next where we trace every contradicting Papoose interview line by line, and trust me, you do not want to scroll past that one. Talk soon. Stay sharp. And remember, receipts always outlive press releases.